Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I have a special, hopefully very fun episode for you guys today. A lot of people have asked me, have you always been good at art? No, not really, not really at all. I've made a lot of bad art over my life. Definitely, you gotta make a lot of bad art before you can even slightly begin to start making good art. And to be perfectly honest with you, I feel like only just recently have I been making really good finished art. There's been a lot of complete, to learn to use a specific artist's craftsman term, a lot of complete dog shit. So I thought it would be fun to take a look into the deep files. We're going way back into the early days when I first really started taking drawing seriously. I always considered the start of my art journey, even though I've been making art my whole life, I always consider the start of my journey to be around 6th grade when I would have been about 10 years old. So we're going to be looking at some ancient pieces here, and I figured this would be funny to share. It's definitely less embarrassing than my browsing history. Now, full disclosure, I'm actually on my second recording of this. I couldn't find a certain image that I really wanted to share, and it was driving me nuts. And after doing the recording, the initial recording, which I wasn't super happy with, I did find the piece I wanted to share, so we're gonna get to that. But first, let's draw our attention to this character here. I feel like, despite the fact that it's not super obviously a anime style, this was one of my first attempts to do anything remotely in that direction. My characters previously were a little more simple even than this. Yes, she's got the perfectly spherical head. There was an attempt at shoes. I think that those shoes are pretty good for that time. We even got a little bit of a wallet chain going on. She actually has fingers. I mean, they're not super recognizable as fingers, but we do actually have fingers. So considering the time, this is pretty good. I want to say maybe this was actually 5th grade. I don't have a date on this illustration. You might be able to see from the texture of the coloring. I mean, there's a lot to take in here. This was mostly colored with gel pens, so that takes me back to those days when gel pens were all the rage. This next image, this is actually an older piece. I should have maybe shown this first, but this is a Harry Potter comic that I drew maybe in the 3rd or 4th grade. This is a scene, the classic scene in Prisoner of Azkaban where Harry encounters this guy in a robe who, I don't know, something about that mouth and the face he's making in that panel. Actually, I'm not really sure what's going on here, showing Harry what that mouth do. But in actuality, this is the scene where Harry almost gets his soul taken from a Dementor, and the nurse prescribes him a large chunk of chocolate. That's why he's saying, that's huge in the last panel. Though I don't know, we could get some innuendo out of this. What I think is really interesting here is you can see I kind of tried, other than the fact that 3rd grade me decided that people getting their souls taken was a nice comic subject, and that's going to be a fun thing to draw. I think it's interesting that you can see I was trying to do like a solid black background behind the panels, and that is something that I like to do quite a bit in my comics now. And with my digitally colored comic, Whoa Awesome Space Babe, I like to have a solid black background behind the white panels, and usually it looks really good. I don't know, maybe it's working here. I think it's kind of working. And next we have Sonic Swordsman guy. I don't know what the story is with this dude. I don't know what his full, edgy, dark, and tragic backstory is of our swordsman Sonic with his very stylish, bright green fingerless gloves. I'm sure there is some significance to this character. This is funny because I was never that much of the terrible Sonic redraw kind of person, except ironically, but we have a genuine Sonic guy here when you go far enough back. And then, oh god, I love this. This is such a masterpiece. I know this was 6th grade. Of course, now that I say that, now I'm debating. I want to say it was 6th grade because I definitely was very into Yu-Gi-Oh! At that time. This is just fantastic. This is from my very first sketchbook, actually. And there's just so much to marvel at. We've got the who cares about his feet? I don't even think I ran out of paper space. It's just like, oh god, I don't. Nope. Look, I got one thumb. That's as many fingers as I can handle. We're not even going to do feet. That is too much. The legs stop there. One of his hands has been replaced with a meaty mallet of flesh. That might be why he looks so pissed off. I'd be pretty mad too if somebody replaced my arm with a flesh hammer. It's just, there's so much to marvel at. This is one of my favorite old art pieces. This is another piece that probably should have been at the very beginning of the video, because this is... ah, jeez, this is like... is this 2nd grade? I don't know. Maybe this is 2nd grade. This is gonna predate the O-Face Dementor comic. We have a character here, a very special character to me. This is one of my first OCs, probably my best Mary Sue OC that you can see on the bottom of the page. You can also see there is Harry Potter, and then there is a self-portrait, and you can tell by my caveman scrawl that I have a plunger on my head. Very interesting fashion statement. And then you can see this chick. Actually, you can't even tell from this illustration that Jessica here, Jessica Jupiter, she is a magical cat girl. You can't see her ears or anything because they're covered by her stylish wizard hat, and apparently her tail was just not important. And also Professor Lupin has been replaced with a wad of dryer lint. I'm not sure what is happening here. He's in the process of becoming incorporeal. But Jessica Jupiter was my original Mary Sue OC with an elaborate backstory about she is... I think her parents were killed by Voldemort or something. That might not have ended up being super plot important to the story, but she was a fashion model as well as a crime fighter. She eventually worked at Hogwarts. She appeared on CBS's hit series Survivor, and I remember that her favorite food was chocolate cake donuts with chocolate frosting, chocolate sprinkles, and Meow Mix topping. That is what I remember about my girl Jessica, a dear, dear OC. I recall in one of my stories about her, she was supposed to stop Voldemort from blowing up the Statue of Liberty, and she did at some point write a letter to Dumbledore requesting that he graciously allow Harry Potter to take some time off from school, come over to New York, and, stop the Statue of Liberty from being blown up. I'm pretty sure that in the comic, or this series of illustrations I drew, that could only be loosely described as a comic, I think she actually did not succeed, and Voldemort did blow up at least the very crown of the Statue of Liberty, and I think that's interesting. I believe I wrote this story sometime in 2002 or late 2001, so I think maybe I was processing some feelings about 9/11 or something, so we gotta we got some relevant cultural, relevant historical events tied into this OC. I don't know if maybe the moral of the story was even magical cat girls are powerless against terrorism, but there was some kind of plot there. Moving on, we have another old OC of mine. This I labeled as 6th grade, correct? I thought maybe that was 5th. I think that is 6th. It does say 6th on my very legible taped together note. This is the first incarnation of a character that you're going to see later on the line, and she's also the character that got the first time I wrote a very I hesitate to use the word extensive here because there was a point where 20-page comic, that was like my magnum opus at the time, and that took me an entire year to do, which, okay, maybe Whoa Awesome Space Babe doesn't actually come out any faster than that, but we're going to be seeing this character along the line. But first we got to talk about Vampire Batgirl, Sasha. She is not having a good time. Not at all. Her wings are just so tiny, she can't get anywhere. Her ears are not in the anatomically correct place for ears to go, and she doesn't have fingers. She's got a little trowel hand. She is just mad as hell about all of this. You'll note that this paper was definitely used as some kind of scrap paper for something. I can tell immediately that this is the really crappy newspaper kind of paper that they gave us in my 7th grade art class. Actually, it was 7th and 8th grade that we did our sketches on this just absolutely terrible paper. And while pulling this out of my collection, I did discover another illustration on the other side. We have got ourselves some anime cougars. Look at the vaguely anime. There's some anime hair on these cougars. I don't remember what the final piece looked like. I recall that it was something that I just absolutely hated. I didn't like the technique we were using to make art in this situation. I found 7th grade art a little frustrating because I wanted to make more interesting things at this point, and we were still kind of doing elementary school crafty sort of things, and I wanted to move myself beyond that, to develop my skills more artistically, like drawing anime cougars. Now this is the piece. This is the piece I was very excited to find. This is also 7th grade art. This was a very big project. This was our watercolor project. This is my sketch for aforementioned project. Don't worry, we're gonna take a look at that. So you can see Charizard here blowing flames, breathing fire at absolutely nothing. But if you look faintly into the background, you can kind of see what looks like the Zapdos that showed up in issue 1 of Sonichu. You can vaguely see a really terrible Zapdos. There's a Chikorita just hanging out. They're all kind of squished onto one side of the paper. There was lightning at some point in the background. I guess I decided lightning was just going to be too difficult to draw. I'm already trying to draw an obese dragon. Just don't want to add too much complications there. Let's take a look at our finished watercolor version. Oh my god, the arms. I don't know what happened. I guess I just had a stroke and forgot that they were supposed to not be little tiny nubbin arms. There's just so much going on here, which this was actually the first time I'd used watercolors in ages. And boy howdy, are they not a forgiving medium, and I'm pretty sure the only tools we were given was just one very small brush. Because I think I spent an entire class period just on that background, at least. This was a process. It's just everything about this. This piece is a gift. I'm so glad I kept this. And I can look back on that and be like, this is where I came from in terms of watercolors. I extol the virtues of watercolors all the time. I love working with them. They're not a forgiving medium. And there was a point where this was the most complex thing I had done with them. So moving on, this is, actually this is 8th grade. I don't know why I thought this was 7th grade, because this was definitely 8th grade. This is on the inside cover of that year's yearbook. I won the yearbook cover contest for this lion that I'm sure you actually could see the end of the sword in the original illustration, and they just like decided he needed to be scooted off the side or something. I don't think that composition decision was mine. I'm not sure what's going on here. You will notice he has fingers. He's holding the guitar in a way that I don't know is the most efficient way to do anything at all. He is supposed to be actively playing the guitar. I guess he doesn't know how to use a guitar either. I actually do remember this was something I was proud of when I did it, which it was probably done towards the beginning of the year, and then by the end of the year I was like, I could have done that a lot better. There's a lot I could have done that was better. Actually, oh man. This is like, well, we're almost approaching 20 years later, and I'm looking at this, and I don't even know if you guys can see. I forgot to color in part of his sleeve on the hand that's holding the neck. Well, okay, both hands are holding the neck of the guitar, but you can see I didn't color in his sleeve. Like, oh my, absolute amateur work. Come on, middle school me, you're better than that. I mean, no, you're not better than that, but I did say that this was something I looked back on as soon as it was published and just thought, you know, I could have done a little bit better. But that's a good sign. That means that I was growing as an artist. I think it's always a good thing to be able to look back on your old art and be like, what the fuck was I thinking? What is happening? What was I doing? Because it means you have developed as an artist and you can look at your older pieces with a more critical eye. This, I should apologize for the, I don't know, is that like peanut butter? I don't know what happened here, but Boob Cat, we have our Boob Cat. I like her design. Her eyes seem to be trying to escape her face. Her eyeliner game is so strong, it is just expanding beyond the contours of her face. I like that the boobs are probably the best drawn part of the piece. Maybe this needs a redraw. We need like a Khajiit swordswoman with cat boobs. Maybe I'm not gonna include the blobs of peanut butter. This might have been one of those. I was drawing it on the way home from school on the bus and having a little snack. Got some peanut butter smeared on this paper. I don't know what happened here. Oh, this is actually something I should have shown earlier in my batch. I wanted my art that I'm showing today to be kind of in order, and it didn't end up perfectly like that. This would have been the very beginning of 7th grade, which you can tell by my note at the bottom. This is from my second ever sketchbook. My first ever one was in the 6th grade. Kind of started in 5th, mostly in 6th. And then this would have been a 7th grade sketchbook. Notice that, actually, now that I'm looking at this closer, I was holding something in my little tiny nub hands. I drew something, like a piece of paper, and I don't know what I was doing. I also lose my fingers when I go to Naruto World. You may notice I've stated in Naruto World I have a headband. That's very, very important lore. But I do not have fingers, so I'm not sure how I'm going to do any of my ninjutsu techniques with a lack of fingers. And we have good old Blaze. This is a redraw of one of those OCs you saw earlier. This I know. I'm not sure why I remember that I drew this on the bus on the way home. You might notice that like the hot dog switchblade, that is actually a boomerang. Don't worry about that. She doesn't get a boomerang in the comic. I decided against the boomerang. Hot dog switchblade, though, maybe. That, there is an idea there. You'll also notice that I drew her pant leg orange before realizing, oh no, that's supposed to be blue. You see, her shirt's already orange. She's already got the orange sword. I mean, orange pants would just be preposterous at this point. I don't remember why her eyes were colored in that particular manner. I'm sure that there was like a 2-second explanation in the comic. We're gonna get to the comic. We are gonna burn that bridge when we get to it. Actually, here it is right here. Here is the bridge. The comic's thylacine. Thylacine is another name for the Tasmanian tiger, and that is what our girl Blaze is. Don't worry about the wings. That doesn't happen in the comic. This particular illustration, before I proceed, I do want to mention this was done... Oh, now I think I'm getting my time periods confused, because I feel like this was the beginning of 7th grade. And what we're going to see... I don't think I did the full colored version until the 8th grade, which seems a little wrong in my timeline, but it does matter when these things happen for a reason I'm going to show you right now, is that this was the point in which I discovered a new medium. This was actually at the Anime Expo. This was at a panel that I attended with my parents about Copic markers. This is something I drew during the panel, this like kind of Sasuke emo vampire guy. Yes, this absolute ghetto abomination was colored with Copic markers. You can see just that magnificent, magnificent streaking. This, it's just kind of painful to look at, because I'm sure a lot of artists who use markers know, but Copic markers are pretty expensive. They're the higher end of markers, which there's there's a couple of reasons why they are expensive. There's valid reasons why they're so expensive. It's just watching them being used like this is a little painful to look back on. And that takes us back to the thylacine cover, and why I'm pretty sure this was colored in a different year than it was actually sketched, because this would have been the point I had been exposed to Copic markers. So that that paper bag sort of thing that she's sitting on, this lone mountaintop that's just got all those streaks, that was not Crayola washable markers. We didn't get the Mr. Sketch scented, chocolate scented markers. Those are Copics, and this kind of makes my soul hurt in hindsight. And this was done on pretty nice paper. This is done on manga manuscript paper. So I was using quality products for this, which you gotta start somewhere. You're gonna have to make, like I said at the beginning of the video, you gotta make a lot of complete garbage before you can start making things that are good. A lot of my marker art was pretty bad for a while. It does take a while to get really used to the media. It's something I really, really like now, and that I have a lot of fun with and feel like I'm pretty good at now. So that's why I'm looking back at pieces like this and thinking, oh no, definitely not. So originally I was going to show a little bit more of thylacine. I was going to do a breakdown of what happens in the first issue, but the problem is, well, nothing really happens. There's a series of occurrences. There's not really a plot, but at the same time, the series of disjointed occurrences are moving forward at an absolutely blistering pace. an incomprehensible series of events that occurs. If I showed you this whole comic, I think you guys might actually have a stroke. I think I was having a stroke trying to assemble it. I was going to show like little snippets of the comic. I might still pop some interesting little panels. But I wanted to show you what the average page looks like, and you may notice that I've changed my methods of page layout. Normally nowadays I like to go in a direction where maybe 5 to 6 panels per page. You got just a little story. It's a nice little chunk of plot. This was more of like, I am going to take a bunch of content and I am going to visually eviscerate you. I am going to destroy your very soul with the amount of content I'm going to force at you at once. Probably had I paneled this comic out in a less schizophrenic way, we wouldn't even be looking at the 22 or so pages I was on. I think I could have stretched it out into maybe 40. I don't know. I would have to do much bigger drawings. I don't know if that would have taken me longer to do. The first issue of this comic, I think, was done through the course of 7th grade, all through summer, and maybe finished in the beginning of 8th grade. So I was taking my time with whatever is happening here. And then there's this dude, this guy. This is what thylacine should have been about. This is like this pyramid head bionicle man. He's got a chainsaw hand. He's got a flaming crossbow hand. His name is Zorlak7. I'm sure that's a reference to something, but this guy is awesome. This is also the only time he shows up, even though he was supposed to appear in a particular giant robot battle that I decided I didn't want to draw, because once was enough. Once I drew this guy, I was like, okay, I'm not putting myself through that again. He shows up once and we're good. But yeah, he should have been the star of this comic. I want to watch Flaming Crossbow Man adventures. But I think that is actually everything that I wanted to show you for this episode anyway. There's going to be some future episodes. I have a vast suppository of terrible art that is hopefully both funny and interesting to look at, and I think it's important to remember you have to do a lot of crappy art to get anywhere. You gotta embrace your terrible art that you've made in the past. Yeah, we can cringe and look at it, but I'm also very proud of my younger self for the amount of art I did. I did do a preposterous amount of drawing in the 8th grade. I filled so many sketchbooks. The fact that I managed to produce any comics at all in that time, as terrible as they were, it still impresses me that I put in that amount of effort. And I don't even know how to conclude this. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed looking at my old art. I encourage you guys to take a look at your own old art, and well, definitely you can laugh at it, but just remember where you have come from as an artist, and definitely be proud of yourselves for how far you have grown. So, until next time, have a great time making art.